Welcome to this week's episode of Eye on the Tigers. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Hewling, and this has been a busy week for Auburn sports. National Signing Day was Tuesday. Gymnastics has a meet tonight that was initially scheduled for last Friday, but was postponed due to COVID cases. And men's and women's hoops both tip off this weekend against big competition. So let's get into it. First up, we have football. National Signing Day was Tuesday under new head coach Brian Harsin, straight from Boise State. This was a big day for the Tigers. They didn't finish as expected, or maybe they did, because with a big coaching change, a lot goes into the mindsets of recruits originally committed before the coaching change. And Auburn happened to finish this day ranked 30th overall, and this was their lowest ranking since 2009. And they haven't been below 12th since then. So, Andy, what are your thoughts on this, and were there any signed prospects that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I thought Auburn did a relatively good job despite the circumstances of the coaching change and some recruits flipping to other schools. But I think Auburn really, they're not requiring these five-star talent yet. I think Harsin, wants to develop guys who are 3- and 2-star recruits and turn them into five-star talent on the football field in college. And I think one guy that can do that is Demetrius Davis from North Shore High School. He's a quarterback, dual threat ability. He's one of Auburn's 5-star recruits that they signed. I think Bo Nix is the guy, but I think Demetrius Davis will come in and give him a healthy quarterback competition this year.
I agree. I, too, am really excited to see how Davis performs under Harsin. And like I said, it's a little disappointing that they finished ranked 30th, but with everything that went on in the offseason, a lot of changes and new adjustments. And I think it's crazy to think that last year the Tigers finished ranked 7th nationally, and 7th to 30th is a big jump. But Harsin still has his options open. And one particular recruit that really stood out to me was Colby Smith, offensive tackle. I think he's going to do great things for the line, which we've seen struggle this past year. And he has great size, great footwork, top 35 prospect out of North Carolina. And I'm really excited to see how he performs on the Tiger team. But in his press conference post-National Signing Day, Harsin was just talking about his major focuses going through this recruiting process. And one of the biggest ones was fit. How these players are going to fit in the culture of Auburn. Do they want to be developed? How are they academically? Do they want to succeed in the classroom as well as on the field? And you can hear what he had to say for himself.
With our coaches, fit was a major factor. We sat down and decided, all right, what is it that we're looking for in this next group of signees that we're going to bring in? Well, fit. And the culture, that's all part of it. Do these guys love football? High character guys, competitive guys that want to come in here and work hard, guys that are winners. And so during the process here, we had those conversations to answer those questions and to figure those things out. And all these guys fit the bill. Guys that we can develop, guys that can come in here that we know their best football is ahead of them, guys that want to develop, guys that we can coach, guys that are going to come in and do the work necessary to get themselves better each and every day. And that's in the classroom, that's in the weight room, that's in the film room. All right, that's each and every day handling their business. And we wanted guys that wanted to be at Auburn. And so through this process, talking to those guys and just getting that feel for who they are and where they wanted to be. Is this the right place? Is this the right fit? Are these the right people? And no doubt in my mind, we got the right ones.
Next up, we have gymnastics. The Tigers will host the rival LSU Tigers tonight in Auburn Arena after last week's meet got postponed to this Friday. Now, this Friday was initially supposed to be a bye week, but last week was their unexpected bye week instead. Andy, what do you think was the most important thing for the Tigers to build on last week? And is there any gymnast that you're excited to see perform tonight?
For sure. I think Auburn, coming into this week, Coach Grabe has just been pushing for them to keep doing their thing. I think, in gymnastics, we talked about it last week, that it's not always about getting a win. It's about performing well, about getting good scores in each rotation that they do. Obviously, you want to win, but when you're performing well and you're scoring like they are, that's going to help them down the road as they improve and keep moving through this tough schedule that has been so far in the SEC. And I think, going up against teams like Alabama, Florida, and Kentucky are really going to help them as they progress through the season. It's going to make them better. It's going to make them compete harder against teams, especially when it comes to the postseason. So I think Auburn can really take that under their belt, that they're really, grinding and, enduring through this tough season that has been for a lot of teams with COVID. But I think, against LSU tonight is going to be a tough matchup. They're looking to, really keep pace with Florida as they sit right behind them in the 2 spot. I think it's going to be a good matchup.
I think it will be a good matchup as well. I think the key for Auburn will just be to build upon their previous performances. This is a very young team, primarily freshmen and sophomores. There are big names like Darren Goborn, senior Drew Watson, who's been plagued with some injuries, but she's slowly but surely coming back. And Coach Graba in his press conference this week was talking about how this is both a blessing and a curse, having last week's week off, just because those athletes who were ready to perform wish that they could have had the chance to perform right at their prime, but those who weren't necessarily ready, they had an extra week to prepare. So hopefully this week they will be even more ready for the competition. And I think a gymnast to watch is sophomore Piper Smith. She set 2 personal records last meet against Alabama on the beam and the bars. She's starting for the first time tonight on the floor and competing in the all-around. And I think even though she's young, only a sophomore, she'll be a player to watch definitely by how she progresses the end of this season going into next. But in his press conference this week, Coach Graba also just talked about how important it is to start strong and build, because there are 5 remaining meets this season, and in this all-SEC schedule, it's going to be very competitive. But as long as the Tigers can continue to improve personally, he will consider it a success.
It's every weekend is going to be a tough matchup. Obviously, we've had a really young team, and we've had nothing but top 10 opponents. So in that respect, this is nothing new to us. And I guess the predictable thing is LSU. We know they're one of the best teams in the country, not just in our conference. They're one of the best teams in the country, and we're expecting to see them ready to go because they're going to try to continue to take that number 1 spot from Florida. And our girls have to go right back to doing what we've been preaching, is like, you got to keep your head down and get better. I do feel this young team got a lot more experience over the last 2 meets that they were thrown into, and hopefully adding some experience back will allow us some depth, will allow us to not put people in positions where they're not fully capable of being successful. So the goal is to start strong and to build. This is really the second half of the season, and that's our goal. 5 straight meets where we continue to improve.
Of the weekend's events, first up, we have women's basketball. The Tigers fell last night against number 1 and number 2 South Carolina. South Carolina came into this game very highly ranked, best in the nation, and the Tigers didn't really stand up to them at all. They started out slow, and in the 4th quarter, when they attempted their comeback effort, they were just too far behind to hang in there. Andy, what do you think went wrong for the Tigers last night, and what needs to be fixed when they host Missouri on Sunday?
I would say, honestly, for Auburn, South Carolina is a really good team. I think, they really beat Auburn handily, and it shows how good they are. But for Auburn, it's just, I think they're, again, just getting plagued by falling behind and then not having enough as they make a comeback effort. This team is good. I think Auburn has talent. Unique Thompson is really the leader on the team, but it's just they can't fall behind. They've got to play with the top teams and play them close. And I think when you fall behind by double digits and then try to attempt a comeback effort like they love to do late in games, and I think it shows that they have resilience. But when you're falling behind by double digits, it's just not going to get you wins in the SEC, especially against the best teams.
The Gamecocks last night definitely took advantage of the Tigers' misfires early on, and they just continued to capitalize on those transitions and the turnovers. And Unique Thompson was shut down last night, although Romy Levy had a career-high number of threes. And I think going into Missouri's game, I think that she's going to be looking to start hot and hopefully finish strong, because this season is quickly going by, and they don't have as many games left as you may think. And the key, I think, to getting the Missouri win is just having effort the entire game. You can't start slow and expect to win these big SEC competition teams. And Coach Flo in her press conference post-game was talking about that. She thinks that they just started slow and there was a lack of effort. And all she really wants for her players is for them to play hard and continually to give everything that they got.
I mean, one of the things and we talked about it at halftime, and I thought they came back in the second half. I didn't think we were playing very hard in the first half. I thought we kind of put our heads down, a little woe is me. We were getting our butt kicked. But I thought they came back in the second half and played harder. And that's all we want. We just want effort and just want you to play hard.
Next up for basketball, we have men's versus Ole Miss tomorrow, where Auburn will be hosting Ole Miss in a rematch, hoping to split the series. The Tigers are coming off of a loss at home versus UGA. They currently split the series with them, where they won in Athens earlier this season. Coach Pearl said that this loss came as a result of being outcoached and being outplayed, and he took all the blame for this and said that it won't happen again. But this was the first time that it did happen this season.
We weren't ready to play. It hasn't happened yet this year, and so I'm disappointed. That's on the coach. I've got to own that, and I will. Georgia outplayed us. We didn't lose. They outplayed us. But the thing I talked to the team about after the Baylor game was if we didn't make a few adjustments, this was going to continue. We didn't make those adjustments. Georgia beat us the same way that Baylor beat us, and there's plenty of tape on it. So our guys are going to see this for the rest of the year.
Andy, what do you think the key takeaway was from the game against Georgia that the Tigers need to capitalize on in order to get this win against Ole Miss and split this series?
Well, for me, I think this was the first time that we really saw Auburn's defense outmatched by Georgia. I thought the Bulldogs really moved the ball around, and they got it to the shooters for three-pointers and just easy layups that Auburn just couldn't seem to defend like normal. Auburn really prides themselves on their shot blocking and their presence down low, but it just was not there against Georgia. So I think Auburn's just going to have to really play a lot stronger on defense, because Ole Miss will look to exploit that same thing from them tomorrow. And I think, they're going to have to really improve that. And look, I think Bruce Pearl had a good point that, they got outplayed. It wasn't that they just lost. They got outplayed. And I think Georgia they were stronger, they were faster, they were getting to every ball. And I think, that's just something that Auburn's going to have to improve for this next game.
Auburn definitely was outplayed, and that does need to be a focus if they want to beat the Rebels on Saturday. Rebels are a talented team. They're really great at capitalizing on other teams' misfires, and if Auburn beats themselves by taking shots that aren't completely there, I think that Ole Miss is going to have no problem shutting them down. And this team needs to just go out there and start hot scoring. They need to improve their shooting percentages, which have improved since the beginning of conference play, because they've improved by almost 20 points, especially since Sharif has been cleared. He was not cleared last time the Tigers played Ole Miss. And this Tiger team is very hot on shooting. They have a great deal of offense that's spread pretty evenly between the players. You have Flanagan, Williams, Thor, Cooper. And I think the key is just going to be making sure to be generous with the ball. And Sharif always looks for those assists, and I think that if they want to beat Ole Miss, they're going to have to continue to just share the ball and make those smart plays and not necessarily just go for every shot that seems open. Andy, who is your player to watch in this game?
My player to watch is Jalen Williams. I think he had a really good game last time they played. He had 24 points against Ole Miss, and I think he's going to be looking to kind of pick up where he left off from that game. And he's been a player that we've been talking about. He's been really improving over the season. His three-point shooting ability has tremendously improved since last year, and I think that's something that Bruce Pearl really wanted to work with him on. He's a good driver to the basket. He's big. He can block shots. He actually leads the nation right now in shot blocks, which is very impressive. But I think ultimately he's a guy that Sharif can rely on to get the basketball to, and I think him, Flanagan, and Cooper are a really good backcourt for Auburn.
My player to watch is Jamal Johnson. I think he's always been kind of a steady role on the Tigers, but as the season has progressed, his role has slowly become bigger, and he's made some key three-pointers. When the Tigers attempted to overcome the Bulldogs on Tuesday, he was there. He accounted for a considerable number of points. And I think that he's just going to be looking to continue to build upon this performance, especially against this Ole Miss team. For our final segment, we have our weekly pick'ems. First up is college basketball. We have Florida versus LSU. Andy, who do you have?
I've got LSU in this game. I think Florida's a good team. It'll be a good matchup, but I think the Tigers will pull this out in a close one.
I too think LSU is going to win. This is going to be a good game. Florida's ranked, LSU is not. But LSU, they have a really high average points per game, and they're way up there over Florida. And I'm surprised that LSU isn't ranked, obviously based on record. But I think that LSU shouldn't have too much trouble taking down the Gators, and I think they're going to get a pretty solid win. Next up, we have Tennessee versus Kentucky. Andy, who do you have?
This is another good matchup. I think Tennessee's playing good basketball, but Kentucky is always still a good team. I know their record doesn't speak very highly of them, but Kentucky will get this win over Tennessee. I think it will be not a surprise to many people because Kentucky has really had Tennessee's number the last couple years. And I think Tennessee, although they're ranked, they've struggled against some of the best teams in the SEC.
I'm going to have to go with Tennessee on this one. I think they're both coming off of losses. Tennessee's was a little shocking. They actually lost to Ole Miss, but they have Fulkerson, and he has over 50% field goal percentage this season, and he is being a great leader on this team. And this is, like we've talked about before, this is not the same Kentucky team as it's been in previous years. And we've watched them against Auburn, and I just think that Tennessee is going to win over Kentucky pretty handily. Next up, we have Alabama versus Missouri. Who do you have?
I've got Missouri in this game. I know, Alabama's playing really good basketball, but see, Missouri is going to be a team that will limit Alabama's production, just like Oklahoma did last Saturday in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. I thought Alabama really, when they're allowed to get in transition and to make shots, they're dangerous and they're going to beat anyone in the country. But Missouri has really good defense. They have good shooters. I think Pinson and Smith are two guys that Missouri really looks for, and they had good games against Auburn last week, and I think they'll continue that this week, and I think they'll get the win over Alabama.
I'm going to have to go with Alabama on this one. Missouri does have a really old and senior team, very talented players, but Alabama, they're just steps above everybody else in the conference, and Herbert Jones has really been leading this team, especially with threes, and they actually held LSU in their last game to a lower three-point percentage than they did previously in the season, and I think that this key, shutting down the three-point shot, is going to be key in their win over Missouri. For our last college basketball matchup, we have Auburn versus Ole Miss. Who do you have?
I've got Ole Miss in this game. I think Auburn has really, in the last couple of years, Ole Miss has really had their number. I think Kermit Davis has done a good job against Auburn in the last couple of matchups. So I'm going to take the Rebels in this one. I think it'll be a close game. But I think Schuler's the difference for Ole Miss. He really makes the difference in the backcourt for them and just changes the way that they play when he's on the court.
I agree. I do think this will be a close game as well, but I think Auburn's going to pull out this win. I think that they have to be almost embarrassed about their loss against Georgia and just being completely outplayed. And I think that they're going to be looking to start hot, play with this fire, and I'm sure that this week in practice, Bruce just really coached them up and said that they should have won Tuesday, which they had the talent. They just didn't execute. And I think that they're going to be coming hot off this loss, trying to beat an Ole Miss that's riding high after beating Tennessee. But like you said, Schuler will put up a good fight, and I'm excited to see this matchup. Next up, we have NBA. First matchup is Milwaukee versus Cleveland. Who do you have?
I've got Milwaukee in this game. I think Giannis is an X factor. Cleveland's got good talent. Colin Sexton is a really big point scorer for them, and Isaac Okoro is probably playing some of the best defense on that team, but I'm going to go with Milwaukee.
I'm going to have to agree. I think that while Cleveland does have some talented players, including former Auburn Tiger Isaac Okoro, Milwaukee is just ranks above everybody else. They have Giannis, they have Chris Middleton, and they've been dominant for the past couple years, and they haven't shown any signs of slowing down. So I think they're going to get this win pretty handily. Next up, we have Celtics versus Clippers. Who do you have?
I've got the Clippers in this game. I think Kawhi Leonard is a very good basketball player. Clippers are playing good basketball currently, and the Celtics are holding their own. But I think on the road in LA, the Celtics don't stand a chance. So I'm going to go with the Clippers.
I do think that being away will prove to be a disadvantage for the Celtics, and this team has been plagued by several injuries, but I think that the Celtics realize that this is when the games really start to count. There's less room for mistakes, and they're coming off of a couple losses, so I think they're going to be looking to start hot and defeat the Clippers. It will probably be a close game, but I'm going to have to go with the Celtics on this one. Next up, we have Brooklyn versus Philadelphia. Who do you have?
Whether you hate the super team or love the super team, I think Brooklyn is going to win this game. Philadelphia's got a good team. I think Joel Embiid will come to play. He had a really good game last night, and I think the combo of Durant and Irving is just going to be too much for the 76ers.
I'm going to have to go with Brooklyn as well. This is a really great matchup. I'm excited to watch it. Like you said, super team, Durant and Irving versus Embiid and Simmons. And I think it's going to be really competitive. It's going to be close, but I too am going to have to go with the Nets. For our final NBA matchup, we have Atlanta versus Toronto. Who do you have?
I'm going to go with Toronto in this game. I know Atlanta's dealing with a lot of injuries right now. They lost a pretty good contest against the Jazz last night, but I thought, they played well, but Trae Young, he just can't rely on himself to be the point scorer. He's got to get it around to other people. I think Van Fleet and Kyle Lowry are big X factors for the Raptors. I think they'll get the win.
I agree. I think the Raptors are going to get this win, even though it isn't Atlanta. Atlanta just started allowing fans, but it is a pandemic. I don't think the home field advantage is going to be too much there. Trae Young is day-to-day with an injury, so that is a huge factor if the Hawks are without their leading scorer. But like you said, Toronto has a very talented offense. The wealth is very spread with Lowry, Van Vliet, Boucher, and I think that Toronto is going to get this win pretty handily. That's all we have for you this week. For more news and sports updates, visit our Twitter at EETV_sports or our website at eagleeyeauburn.com. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Hewling. Have a great weekend, and War Eagle.